support unification. But we'll speak with the last U.S. Commander Berlin, Major General Raymond Haddock, about a changing Germany, Berlin, and the role the U.S. forces have played here.
The last U.S. Commandant, an AFN Berlin special report.
Here is the reason for their latest flaunting of human decency. The ever-growing numbers of East German refugees seeking haven in West Berlin.
It was August 1961, the beginning of the Berlin Wall. There had been a U.S. Commander Berlin since 1949, but now the Cold War had gotten hotter and the role of Yuskov more predominant. It was during this time a Lieutenant Raymond Haddock was stationed in Baumholder, West Germany, his first encounter with the wall.
I took my artillery unit, and we were performing duty up on the border near Schweinfurt. And on the 13th day of August, when the Berlin Wall went up, we heard that on our radios out in the field. And then the next thing we heard was that my president had decided it was a great idea to extend the tour of duty of every soldier serving in Germany at the time in order to show determination in the face of this terrible thing which is taking place in Berlin. So I and every other person serving in Germany at the time was personally impacted by the building of the wall.
Lieutenant Haddock moved on to other assignments, and until as a Major General, he became the last U.S. Commander Berlin. He had spent nearly 10 years in Germany, time which helped him prepare for this complicated military and political duty, especially during the early 80s.
To deploy the cruise missiles, along with our announcement.
Earlier this year, former President Reagan visited Berlin and said that the deployment of the Pershing missile to West Germany in the early 80s brought the Russians to the bargaining table. General Haddock played a major role in that deployment.
Lots of demonstrations in which the soldiers would be driving down the street. There would be a blockade with citizens stopping a convoy, and then the confrontations that would take place between the citizen and the soldier. Many times a soldier standing there with weapon at port arms, confronted by someone who was aggressive and often hostile, trying to wrestle this weapon away from him. Never in the course of our experience there did any soldier ever injure a demonstrator in those confrontations. Many times with convoys rolling down the streets, the demonstrators would jump in front of moving trucks, sometimes even setting little children in front of moving trucks. We always hit the brakes instead of the gas. We never ran over anybody in all of that. And I think that the American soldier who stood in such a highly disciplined fashion in all of those confrontation situations deserves enormous credit for what took place. Because we demonstrated the political will to follow through with the stationing of that system. And over time, as we won the support of the citizens, all of those massive demonstrations went down to near zero. And when the demonstrations went away, then President Gorbachev said, all right, we've lost the battle in the street. He didn't say that out loud, but he must have believed that. We've lost the battle in the street, and therefore we're ready to go to the bargaining table. Now that INF Accord, which was signed between President Gorbachev and President Reagan, created a new atmosphere between the two superpowers. And the fact that this new atmosphere of trust was created laid the foundations for what has taken place in Berlin, in East Germany, and the other East Bloc countries in the recent past.
November 9th, 1989. The U.S. Commander Berlin had come full circle, from Baumholder, West Germany in '61 to the Pershing missile deployment in the early 80s to the fall of the wall.
So many times my wife and I would go down and be at the wall. We wanted to live this. We wanted to experience it personally as much as possible. And so we spent lots of hours down in the vicinity of the wall, greeting people as they came across into West Berlin for the first time. Many people had never had the opportunity to experience what a free society was. And so as they came in, it was an enthusiasm that was unimaginable. As they came across breathing free air for the first time and seeing me standing there in this uniform, so many times I had people come up to me and grab my hand, many times with tears streaming down their cheeks, and saying, "Thank you for being here. Thank the United States of America for being here. Because if you hadn't been here, this wouldn't have happened." Wow. What a tribute to the American people. Every soldier, every airman who has served in Berlin, every American citizen who has provided support for this 45-year policy of standing firm in Berlin ought to feel very proud about what has been accomplished here.
General Haddock says the past 18 USCOVs and their soldiers and airmen deserve much credit.
I am very grateful for what my predecessors did to keep this ship on the proper course. I have the good fortune of being here when the ship comes into port, and we can then enjoy the fruits of our labors. But I would like to compliment all of those who had this position before and say thank you for keeping us on the proper course. Thank you for showing the courage to do what was right, because the image of the United States of America has been in good hands under the leadership of my predecessors. I'm very grateful for that.
During the last days of the position of U.S. Commander Berlin, there were many ceremonies, the last signatures of the American, British, and French commandants, and while the cameras rolled and the world watched, there were those Berliners who had lived in this city and had seen the role of the Allies. The enclave of Steinstücken had been virtually cut off by the wall, although technically in West Berlin, the township could not get supplies. The Americans flew medical supplies, coal, and food in by helicopter, a sort of mini airlift. And so just before unification, the last USCOV and officials from Berlin made the last ceremonial flight into the village. There were speeches and presentations. A plaque was fixed to a monument marking the efforts of the Americans. But for those who were actually here, those efforts cannot be forgotten.
Oh, I'm living here since 1952, and I knew the American soldiers since their first day here, 1961, when Lucius D. Clay came down with a helicopter. I was here like a little child, as a little child, and today it's a very hard day, I think. I'm very happy that the Mauer is away, that we can go on all streets, but I'm very sad, I think it's the right word, that we are losing some friends. The American soldiers had been friends for a long time here, and now they are going, yes, friends are leaving us, and I want to say thank you to all the Americans.
And so today it is a united Germany, and the monuments will stand as reminders, and more soldiers and airmen will come and go in this no longer divided city. And the last U.S. Commander Berlin says those serving here still have an important obligation.
I think the message that I would want to leave with every soldier, every airman, every member of the civilian workforce, with the diplomatic community here in Berlin, would be that we have succeeded as a team. I have many wonderful co-workers who work with me, those who wear pinstripe suits in the diplomatic corps as well as military. We have succeeded as a team. And it's very important that that teamwork and cooperation continue at the top level as well as down in the structure. And for those people who arrive here who haven't had the opportunity to experience all this, we need to be careful that we remind them of how we came to this point. And for every soldier serving in uniform, in the military today, Army, Navy, Air Force, they ought to have a great degree of pride in saying, I know that I made a difference. It didn't just happen out there. I know it made a difference because I am a part of a strong defense establishment that selects the correct policies and then carries it through to completion. And I think that that is a message which is applicable today, just as it was 45 years ago when we began this course on which we set for ourselves.
Today, many ask the question, how long will the American military stay here in Berlin? The Berliners say they'd like to have the Americans here at least as long as the Russians are here. That could be about the middle of the 1990s. And the Americans say they'll stay as long as they're wanted. That's our report. Thanks for joining us.
The Last U.S. Commandant has been a production of AFN Berlin News.